Thank you for listening to another episode of the Rogue Patriot. Here we talk about the historical context of U.S. news and current events to gain a deeper understanding of these issues. This is not a right-wing show or a left-wing show. Although we provide political commentary, we are just very patriotic moderates. Do you love your country but don't agree with everything your party is doing? Do you hate it when people in political parties claim their opinions alone will be the sole savior of the country? If so, this show is for you. Help us, the moderate constitutionalists, take the word patriot back. We have another discussion for you today. So I will be joined by my co-host, Selena.
What's up?
All right. What we got for him today?
Today, let's talk about the presidency always seeming to be old men, and in particular, old white men.
The silent pandemic.
Yeah, the silent pandemic. So, the election coming up, we have Biden and we have Trump.
Yeah.
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 So that's the two choices you have, grandpa or grandpa.
Yeah. Yeah. And when Trump ran in 2016, all of his other Republican candidates, I think were all younger than him by like 10 years.
Well, it doesn't take much.
No, I mean,
I'm
he was
sure
like
he
70.
had to get doctor's clearance to even go to a rally. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, just like getting the doctor's note for the little blue pills. Make sure your heart can handle it before you go to town there. Yeah, they were all younger. And the same thing with Biden running in 2020. All of his other Democratic challengers were younger.
So I think it's like a name thing. Like people hear their name so much. Like with Biden, he used to be the old vice president. So people get to where they hear these names and it's like, oh, you know, I know that person. They're on the side I'm on. They're from that party. I'm voting them in. So then you're stuck with these people who have been in office and haven't made a difference. Now, in Trump's case, he hadn't been in the office like that. But it's still an old dude, man. I mean, come on.
He's been in tabloids for 40 years.
Yeah, easy name to pick up on and just go with.
Plus having The Apprentice and everything.
The other thing, from another side, just dodging, or rather getting off the path of old men, we haven't really had any good females run. I'm not saying we need a female, but I'm just saying we haven't really had a good option when we have had a chance at them. I mean, you're stuck with what? Hillary and Sarah and Pelosi.
Sarah Palin.
Sarah Palin. And did Pelosi run?
No, she's never run for president that I'm aware of. Definitely
Okay.
not in the current,
Good.
era. Yeah.
I don't care for her.
She'll probably be next. I'm
having a feeling that she will probably be next, but then you're stuck with an old white lady.
She's already like 81. So,
yeah.
Yeah.
It seems like everybody in politics is just old and crippled, and we're trusting them to make decisions for the country.
Yeah.
Like that's not a good idea. I guess also like boomers and stuff would consider that experienced because that'd be like their age group or something, and they take offense if you tell them, it's time for the new crowd to move up.
Yeah.
That's just how they are. But something I find funny with these presidents, or rather their followers, is I'll see this thing on Facebook with like Biden, people saying that he's stuttering or he can't remember his speech, or see, he's too old to be president. And then I look at Trump and I'm like, legit, he's too old to be president. But they don't say that about Trump. And then on the things that Republicans share with Trump, they'll be like, oh, look at him getting off the plane and so tired from being and their heart goes out to him because it's his tiredness and his old look. Like there was this one picture where he was getting off the jet, or it was a video actually, and he looked so tired, and like he looked old is what he looked, but they were saying he looked so tired from flying in that private jet.
Yeah, exactly.
It must have been such a hard flight, and coming down those stairs, because like he was coming down the stairs like slow, like it looked like it was taking a toll on him. And they were just like, it's because he's such a good president and he works so hard. But then when Biden has a tired day, it's he's too old to do the job. And I'm like, they're both too old.
Yeah, they really are. Trump is younger than Biden by like 3 years or something. I mean,
it's not a big difference.
No. It's practically the same. I don't know why it's always the oldest person recently gets it. For some reason, they are always the one that gets the nomination.
I really do think it's because they've been in the media longer. I really do.
And also, I mean, politics basically comes down to how much money you can raise. And whoever's been around the longest is going to have the deepest list of potential donors because they've been meeting people, they've been wheeling and dealing forever, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I wish there was a different system to where it wasn't how many rallies you can go to or go through and stuff like that and pay for. It's really sad that the people that get a chance at being president are rich people. It's how much money they've already got money. Everybody that runs, they've already got money, and then they're getting more money. Then they're going to become president and get even more money, and then they're looking after a country that, I'm not saying there's not rich people, but you got a bunch of middle class and a bunch of poverty.
Yeah, by a lot.
Yeah, so they don't really have experience with what the country needs anyway, like the citizens themselves.
Few of them do.
So why does no one push for a different system of, okay, we don't need like rallies and money to do this. You sign up to become president, and then you're voted through. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, actually voted through, not who showed up at the most towns.
Yeah. Well, that is, I think, largely because it would require people who are getting an advantage from the current system to stop getting that advantage, change the system for the quote-unquote betterment of humanity.
Like
Nobody
the
does
founding
that stuff.
fathers did.
Yeah, exactly.
Like
they might have been the last ones.
Fathers.
Yeah.
Like, that's legit what they did. They would give up their comfortability and their power and make a difference.
For the betterment of the country.
Exactly.
But, that was hot off the heels of a giant war where a lot of people died. And people are more willing to be good to each other after big events like that. We saw that after 9/11 for the first 6 months, maybe even a year after 9/11, politics didn't exist. Everybody was united against the front, against Al Qaeda and against bin Laden and all that stuff. It wasn't until later we started seeing those political divisions open back up again.
Yeah. And then we have more social media nowadays. So when something big does happen, there's less hands-on emotion about it.
Yeah.
There's more, I shared a meme saying I stand with this hashtag, whatever. So they feel like they've done their part.
Which goes for the president and politicians as well, not just individual people.
Yeah.
Because that's what, we've got presidents and candidates now responding to mass shootings and stuff with a tweet, and that's their official response to it.
Yeah.
Yeah. There is a little bit of hypocrisy in this because, the founders of the country were all old white men of means. And the system that they created at the time was basically so that people like them could also have a voice in government. When the country started, it wasn't really for everybody to have an equal say in who was running. It was more so that different powerful people or wealthy people or landowners, could kind of have a role in it, because before that, obviously, it was a kingdom. We were a part of a kingdom, and there was no democracy whatsoever. It was whatever the king said is what went. And but we've changed that now, obviously, over the course of American history to include everybody. And as of, after the 1960s, really to include everybody, and nobody can be unlawfully, told that they can't vote because of their skin color or because of their IQ or anything else like that. But what we've seen recently with such a huge trend towards electing older and older people is really odd, because neither George W. Bush or Barack Obama were really old when they got into office. Obama was, I think, in his early 50s. Bush was, I think, somewhere around there. Sam Clinton wasn't really old. The first George H.W. Bush, he was definitely older, but he was a fighter pilot in World War II. He was the director of the CIA. He was a vice president. He had a really huge record of public service and accomplishments, whether or not you agree with them.
But do we always need someone who's been in so many different offices covering so many? Do we always need someone who's already been governor of something, already held a position like that? I know people think, oh, well, that's experience. Really?
Yeah, it seems to be a real double-edged sword, because you get people in like that and, they perpetuate a lot of the things that make the system bad. Because, when somebody's invested in the system overall, they're less likely to want to burn parts of it down, even when they need to.
Yeah, you see that in regular work environments all the time. You have the older managers and stuff that they don't allow change.
Oh,
They're
God.
stuck in those ways. So do we really need people like that as a president that are stuck in their ways and that are trying to keep the country the way it already is, or fighting for the same causes that we fight for over and over again? The Republicans is border control and gun laws, and the Democrats are, gay marriage. And I mean, now that it's been passed, but I'm just saying that was their thing. It's the same things over and over, and there's so many other things to focus on that's so much more important than those. And I'm not saying that those aren't important, but take a break from those and just let's focus on something else. And these, in my opinion, these old timers, as I'll call them, they don't focus on that. They want to fight over the same things, and they don't really offer any benefit.
No.
And I mean, you're not really offering any benefit when people look at you while you're making a speech on screen and wondering when you're going to have a heart attack.
Yeah, exactly.
Just croak,
when you're gonna fall over.
Yeah.
I agree. The party platforms have not changed or added new issues significantly in at least 10 years, probably more like 15. That haven't been minor ones. I mean, look, you'll hear people say like, oh, well, I mean, the Democrats, in 2008 were not pro-gay marriage. That's a huge change in, 10 years. It is, but that's one issue. There are so many problems that we have in society, both at home and then just in the world in general. These piecemeal issues, one at a time, that the parties kind of change on or add into their umbrella is just not enough.
Yeah.
And the older these people get, the less we hear of that. Now, I think to your point about should somebody be, a lifelong government person, are they any better at the presidency or at these offices? It seems to all be about who they pick to be around them. Because that was one of the reasons I think a lot of people elected Trump in 2016 was that he was not a long-term government guy. This was his first entry into politics, was the presidency. But the people he chose to run his administration were all people, or primarily people, that had been in politics forever.
A lot of them crooked.
Yeah, of course. And I know there'll be people like, oh, well, what about this person? What about this person? Dude, 95% of them were government hacks. They were long-term, old-school Republican government operatives. Mm-hmm. And that's just how it is. So did we see a whole lot of change like he had talked about, or in the ways he talked about? No. Because the things that he wanted to change, those people benefited from, and now he's benefiting from. So, no, of course those things didn't change.
It's like the only thing he brought to the table was to take what they already accomplished or whatever they stood for. He took that and then added hatred to it, in my opinion. A lot of anger, because you see it a lot more, in my opinion. Maybe others don't agree with me, but I see a lot more anger and hate with this run of a president. Than I ever have.
Yep.
And in my lifetime, at least. I'm not saying it hasn't happened in the past, but there's been a lot more hate and stuff. And it's the way he presents himself anyway in talks. It's just not, it's not professional, and it's not president-like to me. But, it's definitely with who you surround yourself by. But, I mean, I think if you look at a lot of the younger people that run, they do seem to have more moderate ideas. Which is a better way to be.
Yep.
And I'm not saying they're going to be the best at it. They're going to make mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes and does something good. Obviously, Trump has done something good, and he's had, in my opinion, a lot of mistakes.
Yes.
But, I mean, I'm sure people disagree with that. And it's just like Obama. He did some good things, and he had some mistakes. I get that. But younger people, at least what they're focusing on is to get us on a more updated route, I guess. Or, get with the times, focus on things that maybe older people don't focus on that's going in. I would say that older people aren't on social media, so they don't really know what the topics are, but they still latch on to those. Yeah,
because they're all in their Facebook bubbles, and they're getting all those stupid memes and chain emails, and that's what they're getting their information from too.
Yeah.
So the social media is not exposing them to anything other than an echo chamber.
Yeah.
Because if you want to do research on social media or see opposing views, you actually have to know how to use it. And these people don't.
Yeah.
Right?
Most people are they're going to have someone managing their Twitter and Facebook anyway.
Right.
But, when you've surrounded yourself with old people as well, and you're old, who's managing your shit?
Yeah, exactly.
Old people. Young people are probably going to hire a bunch of younger people to manage their shit.
Yeah.
That's just the way it is.
Yeah.
Who was that guy? I forgot his name again. The guy that was running for the
On the Democrats, Andrew Yang.
What was his name?
Andrew Yang.
What were some of his?
Well, he had a kind of one issue campaign, or one main issue campaign, which was the problem with artificial intelligence and machine learning and automation, the problems that is going to cause in society over the next 20, 30 years.
Yeah.
And so he made his whole campaign about this concept called universal basic income, which is where the government sends every adult person a check for X amount of money every month. And that's just that. That money is yours to do whatever you want with. And the idea is that it will prevent people from starving and losing their homes when their jobs are done away with because they get automated away. And will give them a platform to find something else to do creatively or as another job.
I would think with that idea, you could just lower taxes and let people have more of their money back per paycheck than to send them a check.
Well, I mean, we're talking about, the universal basic income annual amount that he was proposing, I think was like $30,000 a year or something.
Okay.
You've got to be paying a hell of a lot in taxes to get that much money back, even if they reduce your bracket.
That might. I don't know how. I don't know how I feel on that. I'd have to.
Yeah, that's a whole other topic. That's a whole other topic.
But at least, his idea was like, do you hear that in any speeches from these older guys? Like anything about technology and stuff that is very active in our society nowadays. That you kind of need to look at stuff like that.
Oh my
Technology
God.
has come so far, and a lot of people just think, it's for our benefit. It's just for us to use, like just hopping in a car. But even a car, you have things that you need to look at, like how much pollution it's putting out in the air, which I know a lot of people, don't want to hear about. That's more of a left side thing to discuss, climate change and stuff. But younger people take those and they add to them, like with the technology thing. Things that you're not looking at now, but it would benefit you to go ahead and start working on a solution now.
Right, exactly, before letting it hit you in the face.
Yeah, older people don't do that. It's just, if it happens, it happens.
Yeah, and that's something that I think, maybe when those older people were young, they were saying the same thing about the old people at the time. That might just be a thing that, we're all exposed to different things in our life based on our age and where we are and the things we engage in.
I think it was the cartoons we grew up on.
Maybe.
You had Captain Planet and stuff preaching to you every afternoon
true.
after school. So we grew up on things to where, the shows we watched were about our environment or technology evolving. So we grew up with this idea to go ahead and protect what we have now and that we were going to be the generation to make a difference.
Yeah.
That's the idea we grew up with, and that's not a bad thing. I'm not saying it's arrogant or anything. I'm sure some like boomers and stuff would view it that way, but it's actually a good thing because if you're being told that you can make a difference, that no one person isn't going to save the world, but if each of you are trying to save the world, that you can try to, you can put an effort towards it, and you will make some amount of difference. And I think growing up with that, idea makes it to where you push for that more anyway.
Yeah.
So then you get more successful leaders that are pitching that idea. And I think it's a good thing, which is why I hate that we are still voting in such old people, because they didn't grow up with that. And it may be the times that they grew up in, like whether they grew up in the Depression or something like that. You're not going to grow up with the happiest thoughts anyway. Right. But we don't need someone else trying to get us in a depression or just focusing on things that haven't gotten us far enough away from bad times anyway. Yeah. So, it's just younger people I'm going to say it's because of cartoons. I'm going to say it's the shows and stuff. I'm going to give credit to that.
I like it.
The happy times,
Well, but the things that you just described all involve being more conscientious of your society and of the people around you.
Yeah, not
and
thinking of yourself alone.
As a whole. Well, look, when Donald Trump was a kid, the U.S. had less than half of its current population. So it's not like that mentality. It's not just that it wasn't as common in society. It wasn't even as needed because there were so many fewer people.
Yep.
So it's crazy to assume that, somebody growing up in the 1950s versus somebody growing up in the 1990s or 2000s is going to have the same foothold in just what reality is and what life in the U.S. actually is.
Times have changed so much. I mean, anybody that was born in the 50s and is still alive, today has seen a lot of change.
Oh,
and
God.
that's not a bad thing. They've lived through a lot of different eras. Like, it's different, just how cars have evolved, TVs, smartphones coming out, social media, all this stuff.
Moon landing.
The way we read newspapers now,
Yeah.
all these things that have happened, it's not a bad thing because, they do, I think, have an amount of wisdom from living through that. But at the same time, they're so used to it changing. If you think of it over a lifetime, that's a lot of changes. So to them, I think it's more of it's going to change again soon anyway. Well,
Maybe.
when you have someone younger that's lived, like, okay, from my generation, growing up when technology was really just like, I don't want to say being invented, but, computers just
Being
coming out and mainstream and then evolving at the same time to where the main focus is climate control and technology and stuff like that. We can focus on those important ideas. And I think everybody can agree that one of our main things that will continue to evolve is technology. And it's something that we're always going to use from here on out. And I think that gives us more of a focus on that. I mean, speaking on that guy, just doing something with technology, it's more beneficial, while the older people haven't really, I don't want to say their time period hasn't stopped long enough to have one focus, because, they were pretty, they weren't old, but when computers started becoming mainstream and stuff, especially more of the recent stuff like smartphones and smart cars and all that kind of stuff, they didn't grow up with it. So even if they use it, they don't know it like the back of their hand. They still have issues operating it and stuff. And then they're just going to think, something new is going to come out soon anyway.
Well, that was a big criticism of Trump when he was running in 2016, is there wasn't a picture of him using a computer. Every picture of him was at his office desk in Trump Tower, and there was no computer there. And after that turned into like a little thing on the campaign trail, they all of a sudden started releasing pictures of him typing, quote unquote, and holding a smartphone, and it was the most staged nonsense ever. It looked like he was holding a bomb. It was so freaking funny. And it was like, man, of course not. Why would he?
Stupid.
He's been having secretaries
to
do that crap for him forever.
Yeah.
But the thing is, I mean, these candidates are not talking about artificial intelligence and machine learning because they don't have the conceptual basis to even understand it.
They can't comprehend it.
And they refuse to, for some reason, listen to people who do understand it and then incorporate that into their policies. Mm-hmm. And what's going to happen is all of society is going to get smacked in the face when all of a sudden Amazon owns all of us.
Yeah.
And the government was completely unprepared for this new sector.
And the thing is, I think that's a problem with older people anyway, is they have an issue with being told something by a younger person or someone with new ideas. They get really defensive over that. Or at least all the older people I do. They do not, again, back to the work environment. In your basic everyday work environment at your company or institute, wherever you work, you have these older people that they've been there so long. They have that higher position just because they've been there so long. It's not that they really know the job or anything. And then they get to make the decisions. They have the power, they have the control, and then you'll have new people come in with new ideas and everything to benefit the company. And older people they don't like that. So if you have a leader of a country who is living the same way to where, they're older, they don't understand it, they don't accept the new ideas, they're not really benefiting the country. Just like your boss wouldn't benefit the company because they're just keeping it in the stage it's at now. And everything needs to grow. And you can always learn something new. You should never. That's something my grandmother always told me, is you should always try to learn something new. There's always something new to learn. Never stop learning. Yeah. And a lot of older people don't do that. When they hit a certain age, they're like, I've been a mom or a dad or whatever. I'm now a grandparent. I've had a job for this long. You know, I've had surgery and I've went through this many houses and cars. They think they know everything. They think they've been through everything, and they don't want to learn anything new. They don't want to listen to any new ideas. And it's not really a good thing for everyone as a whole. It's really not.
And those are people that, I mean, we're talking about this from personal experience, from like regular blue collar people and you know, folks that we know. Imagine those people now being in power for 40 years and having the ability to tell somebody else what to do for those whole 40 years and never, ever being forced to actually learn something.
Yep.
Because a lot of people don't learn a new thing until they're forced to by something. I mean, if you're not naturally interested in it, you're going to wait until there's a reason you need to learn it before you learn it. That's normal. There's nothing wrong with that. But the problem is when you're in a environment where you will never be forced to learn anything new, and then you want to try to lead something, that becomes a big issue because you're just fundamentally not prepared.
Yeah, and it's especially bad when it is people with money getting in that power that also have the age along with it, is because they do hire people, like you said with Trump, he always had secretaries doing it. They have someone else doing it for them. So they don't have that experience. They don't know that effort of putting something in to getting the job done. What they have quote unquote earned hasn't really been earned by them. The paperwork's filled out by somebody else. The process is thought of by someone else. The speech is written by someone else.
Yep.
So they've always had the path has been laid for them and they've just walked it. And when you have someone who's younger, they're less likely to be, I don't want to say they're less likely to be as rich or whatever, but if you start voting people in or giving people a chance that's younger and that isn't, you know, they can be high middle class, whatever, but they're not filthy rich. They've had to work for what they've gotten, you know. They worked to get into college. They worked for that first job, you know. They've worked to get the promotion. When they have legit worked, not said that they've worked and it was handed, but it's you can see the difference in people who have worked for something in life and the people who have had it handed to them because of their money.
Oh God,
and
so can.
Yeah, you can see it. And I'm not saying someone who, like, you can have a rich person standing next to someone who worked their ass off, and the rich person may be the better leader, maybe, but you know, I'm just saying that you're more likely to get someone who is at least taking better steps to being a great leader if you have someone who's more moderate, that's younger, and that also had to work for what they've gotten in life.
Yeah,
because they
absolutely
understand what it's like to be a regular citizen.
Yep. And we saw that in the Democratic primary this year. There were a number of contenders that fit that description better. There were not only old white men running. It's just for some reason the electorate, quote unquote, picked the oldest, whitest one.
Yep.
But I liked Andrew Yang a lot because he had a really different perspective on things than anybody else in government, because he was coming at it from the point of view of a technologist. And you know, when you say you like a radical candidate like him, people are always like, oh, so you like everything he had to say? No, I don't like everything anybody has to say. And the way that you guard yourself,
we don't even like everything that we say to each other.
Oh God, no. Yeah, of course.
We'll start bickering.
No. But the way you guard yourself from that in politics is by having a divided government. The only time that would be a problem is if you had a radical candidate in the White House and they had a majority in the Senate and the House. Then they can pass whatever the hell they want. That's a big problem. But when that's not the case, then there will still have to be some kind of bipartisan agreement to get things passed. And that's super important for the country. This country was founded on disagreement. I say this all the time. That is the point. Things are supposed to move kind of slowly because people are working out their differences. Yeah. And so
well, if the country wasn't built on disagreements, if you didn't have that, you would just have a country that has rules set in place and we all have to follow them. There you go. It's not America. It's not free.
Yeah, it's fascist.
That's fascist. That's it.
Yes.
When you have it laid out like that, it's not America.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and it's really annoying that if you say fascist, everybody just thinks you're some crazy liberal right now, but hopefully we'll get away from that in the next 4 years.
Got to get some more smart people out there.
God, we do. But yeah, Andrew Yang was one of them. There were a few candidates that I think were actually saying something different, and they didn't have 40 years of party politics behind them to get elected. And there were definitely some candidates in the Democratic field that were saying the same old thing. Like there was one guy named Pete Buttigieg who made it pretty far in the race, and he was a young guy. He was a gay man. He was a combat veteran, and a lot of people really liked him. But I'll be damned if he just did not have one idea that was actually new. He was one of these guys that, yeah, he was a younger guy, a younger face. He was a gay guy. He was a veteran. So the Democratic Party, I think, kind of felt like, oh, this guy really has a shot because he's going to resonate with minorities better than anybody else. But his ideas were the same rank and file Democratic Party ideas ever. I mean, it was just straight along. You could go to the Democratic Party website, print off their platform, and hand it to him, and it would be exactly what he was going to say anyway.
Yeah.
So what good is that? I mean, we don't need just somebody who's younger, looks and sounds different, but is saying the same stupid shit. That's not going to help anybody. We need somebody saying something different with a different perspective as well. We have yet to have a technologist in the White House. I think that's really important because that's the biggest field or the fastest growing sector in the economy is technology related. And it's been that way for 30 years, at least, something like that.
Yeah.
So to have that mentality not represented in country leadership is nuts. I mean, we really are like begging for Amazon just to come steal all of our identities and make machine copies of us in a computer and, kill us all or something like that. I mean, that's kind of the point where it goes to. All of a sudden we'll all be different Alexas. We'll just have a different color. But that was actually another point that Andrew Yang talked about. That is something none of these super old guys would even understand enough to bring up. Is Andrew Yang had a point where the biggest companies in Silicon Valley are making, the reason that they're so big, the reason they've made so much money is from your data. And you don't get a royalty for your data. You're giving that to them for free, and they shouldn't be allowed to make trillions and trillions of dollars and be these gigantic companies off of something that they are harvesting for nothing.
Yeah.
And so he had this idea where those companies should be mandated to pay their users a royalty fee for using their data. And is that something I agree with? I don't really know because I'm not sure what the implications of that would be economically. It would definitely shrink those companies' net worth by a little bit because all of a sudden all that data they're harvesting for free, they now got to pay for. And when you're talking about, billions of people, then that's a gigantic amount of money. But the idea itself would never come from Trump or Biden or anybody else of that class because I don't think that's way too nice. I know they do not understand how those companies function. They don't know how Google makes its money. They don't know how Facebook makes its money. That's obvious through some of the congressional hearings that have happened because there's a whole bunch of senators that are just as old and just as clueless that are making really important decisions. Mm-hmm. So there's not really much that can be done about that. I don't think. I mean, obviously, vote your conscience when the elections come around. But the problem is a lot of these really old people, they have the right donors. They know the right people. They have the right connections. And so it's really easy for them to run and win. Do you have anything else on this topic, Selena?
No, that's it.
All right. Well, as always, check out the podcast wherever you listen to podcasts, and please subscribe, rate, and comment there. Also, all the shows are posted on YouTube along with other content, including segments like Check This Out, where I review several news stories that I found interesting throughout the week. Our YouTube channel is The Rogue Patriot. Also, you can contact us at theroguepatriot@gmail.com. Nope, I'm sorry, The Rogue Patriot Podcast @gmail.com. You can send us questions, topics, or whatever else you want to there. Thank you for listening. We will see you next time.